A few wads of money, a pretty gift, a tiny favor, a big promise, or even sex? Bribery appears in different shapes. A brief moment of inattention, of seduction, a guilty conscience for a lifetime. Corruption is among us, among all of us, but it never pays off. It can have fatal consequences and costs the global economy trillions every year. We have to rethink this every day. What if politicians and those in power in the world stopped promoting and preferring their friends? What if officials, company bosses, and decision makers no longer accepted bribes? What if parents no longer exemplified corruption for their children? What world could we live in then? In a world full of justice and fairness, let's fight together with enlightenment, knowledge, education, training, for a fair and better future for all of us. IACA.INT.
Good afternoon. My name is Thomas Stelzer. I'm the Dean and Executive Secretary of the International Anti-Corruption Academy, the only international organization that holistically deals with the fight against corruption by providing technical assistance, mainly in the field of education. I welcome you to this side event of COSP here in the Nile Valley. I thank the audience who have made the long walk over here, and I welcome everybody who is participating in this side event online. Before we start, I just would like to give the floor very briefly to Doris, who will tell you just technical issues, how to participate. Please, Doris.
Yes, this will be very short. As you have noticed, this is a hybrid event. We have two panelists as well as participants joining us online. We will have a Q&A, including also the online participants. So please, online participants, put your questions in the Q&A box or in the chat. We will also be taking questions from the floor. And as you have seen in the UNODC video, please make sure to wear your masks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's very straightforward. In order to dispatch our mandate to facilitate implementation of the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, we have to identify those who benefit from our products, who to approach, who are the practitioners, the lawyers, the prosecutors, the judges, judicial personnel, who can profit from our education and from our technical assistance to understand the provisions of the convention and implement them in the daily life. So it's a very strong outreach effect, an advocacy effect. Help people see where corruption happens, make them aware that we can no longer afford corruption economically, socially, politically, so that fighting corruption is in our shared interest. Based on UNCAC, the global instrument that for the first time provides us with the legal basis to fight corruption on the basis of the rule of law, excluding impunity. A few months ago, I was sitting in a city of Cartagena in the Caribbean, and I was invited to Colombia to meet with the president to discuss anti-corruption strategies. So I was sitting with the mayor of Cartagena, William Dow, in his office, and we discussed corruption. And he was telling about his own efforts, how he is fighting corruption in his own city, how discussing his impact. And I was really mesmerized, I have to say, by his account. And I said, Mayor, you are the person I've been looking for. He said, why? I said, because there's so many other mayors out in the world who would also like to fight corruption. But some of them lack the courage, others don't know how to do it. So why don't we try to make your best practices available to mayors all over the world and to local government, the institutions that are closest to our constituents, to the people, help them learn how to mainstream anti-corruption content into urban and local politics. So Mayor Dow agreed. This was the birth moment, Hic et Nunc, of our initiative of global anti-corruption cities, which in the meantime has expanded already into provinces. This is the formal introduction to all of you, the Birth Act, with the invitation to go out and to bring cities and local governments into our informal network. So I'm not going to read the biographies of the participants here. We have to save time. We only have 1 hour of content here. You have the biographies in the flyers that we made available. You can download them. I think we just jump into medias res, and I would like to invite Mayor William Dow of Cartagena to take the floor.
Thank you, Thomas.
10 minutes. Yeah.
Hello, good morning and anti-corruptive greetings to everybody that is here present and connected online. As Dr. Stelzer said, my name is William Dow. I am the mayor of the city of Cartagena and have been an anti-corruption activist for the past 25 years. In 2004, I had to flee my home country for death threats as a result of my work as an anti-corruption activist. I had the then current mayor and the 2 previous mayors all fleeing from justice on my account, and I started receiving death threats. First, it was telephone calls, then it was actually assassins that would go to my office. One day there'd be 2, the next day there'd be 1, the following day 3, waiting to kill me. My last 2 months in Colombia before fleeing for political asylum in the United States, I had a permanent police escort. I'd never left the house without a bulletproof vest. It was very scary. And I had some twin babies, just 3 months old. I could not leave them orphans. So I left, I requested asylum, and I swore that someday I would return to finish that fight. It took me almost 15 years, but I came back because I did not want to grow old and die being in the opposition, throwing rocks at corrupt government. I had to take power away from them. And I came back in June 2019, and in just 4.5 months, by going frontally against all the corrupt politicians using proper names, the citizens backed me up and they elected me mayor of Cartagena in the biggest surprise election in Colombia. So that has been great. We have continued our fight. This is my reason for being: corruption. This is the biggest problem that exists. I often quote former World Bank President James Wolfson, who said, "Corruption is the greatest single factor that prevents eliminating poverty from the face of the earth." And so this is what we came up against. Unfortunately, it is hard for a mayor to fight corruption when there is no backing from the national government, much less from the judicial system. I always say, microphone in hand, that in Colombia, corrupt politicians rarely get punished because everybody eats off the same plate. The judiciary, the just legislative, the executive, they all eat off the same plate. So I think this idea of Dr. Stelzer to create a global association of anti-corruption cities is great, because we can help each other, we can support each other, we can share experiences, and we can bring international spotlight whenever we need to address local problems. I know that it takes a lot of courage to face up to corruption, but somebody has to start. We have to start somewhere. And believe me, if somebody does say it, the civil population will back you up. Thanks to internet, through international communications, the corrupt politicians are being exposed more and more each day. And this works in our favor. What else can I tell you? I'll give you an example. Thanks to Dr. Stelzer's invitation from YACA for me to assist to come to this anti-corruption convention, I needed permission from the city council. City council is 19 members, 18 are opposition. I needed their authorization to be able to come to Egypt to attend the anti-corruption conference. Well, the city council said, no, you're not going to go there to learn about fighting corruption. No, you stay here. We did not authorize it. They were getting even because I exposed them. So you have to be resourceful. What did I do? I said, okay, I'm taking vacation. I don't need permission to go on vacation because Yaka provided my plane fare, my hotels. I came here and I'm here. And I'm demonstrating courageously to the people of the city of Cartagena that we don't have to bow our heads. We do not need to be afraid, and we can get the job done. It would be amazing if we could get hundreds of cities from around the globe to join this network. It would make us so powerful, so powerful. And cities are the future of the world. It's not countries. Global cities are the future. That's where the population is. And we have to support each other. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mayor Dao, for your introductory remarks. You'll get the floor again afterwards. Let us now invite virtual participants of this side table from the city of Vienna to take the floor now. Vienna is the host city of the UNODC, of the Vienna International Organizations. We're very much linked to Vienna, and I'm greeting in Vienna Ms. Shams Asadi, who is the Human Rights Commissioner of Vienna. Vienna is a human rights city. She's a practitioner in networking on human rights. And of course, there's a strong human rights component to anti-corruption also. I'm very happy to tap into her expertise. And we also have Mr. Alexander Huber, who is the Chief of Staff of the Deputy Mayor of the city of Vienna and his Senior Policy Advisor. The Deputy Mayor of Vienna is dealing with transparency and anti-corruption issues. So he is our contact there, and we are relying very much on the city of Vienna, their input and their expertise and their support, and also soon, hopefully, on the participation in our global network. So over to Vienna, you're invited to take the floor. Thank you.
Excuse me, can you hear us? We just had connection problems when you called our name. Dr. Schelzer, can you hear us?
We hear you well. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for inviting us. Please,
Yes.
maybe you want to start here.
Hello from Vienna. It's such a great pleasure and honor for us to be with you and just tell you a little bit about our experiences from Vienna. My colleague Alexander Huber and I myself, we will tell you a little bit what we do in Vienna. Connection of anti-corruption and human rights is receiving more attention in the past time. Corruption is indeed one of the major impediments of realization and implementation of human rights, as we heard also before. And of course, it is evident that with lack of civil or just political rights in the one city or one state, the corruptions, the rate of corruptions are increasing, and it occurs indeed. We heard from the mayor of Cartagena that how important are the cities. Cities are places where people, they live, they work, and the cities take an important role in combating of corruption, but for realization of human rights and implementation. Since people, they live and they work in cities, they have to access to the infrastructure or the services that they are afforded in the cities. So the right holders and the duty bearers, they live in this area and they encounter each other. And in most of the cases, they know each other. So cities, they really offer the better place for combating corruption, but on hand of human rights. I mean, the question is, how do cities they really do? And we know that human rights cities, they use the instrument human rights-based approach. But what is this approach? And I have to mention that Human Rights City of Vienna, we are a human rights city since 2014, and we see the human rights as a cross-cutting subject for our politicians, but for our authorities and also for the civil society. So being a human rights city is more or less, it's a self-declaration, but our declaration has been approved through the City Council, and we are officially a human rights city since 2014. So what does it mean, human rights-based approach, and especially the connection to the corruption? Human rights-based approach has 4 pillars. Pillar number 1 is participation. Participation is right of people. In order to understand, in order to be informed about the decisions. Number 2 is equality and non-discrimination. Human rights are universal. They are for everybody and everywhere. So the universality and of course the equality of people, it is something that we are born with that. And of course, the number 3, it goes very much to accountability, and accountability, we know it is that governments, they are obliged to create mechanism for informing of the people and taking the people with them in the decision-making process. And how does it function? It comes 4th pillar, and the 4th pillar is transparency. Transparency is the pillar that really very directly has to do with corruption and anti-corruption measures. And of course, trust to the politicians, trust to the authorities is very important, and accountability, it guarantee that, and with transparency again, we go to the decision-making process that it's taken place in the cities. And with knowing all of that, that Vienna is a city of human rights, and human rights-based approach is our instrument for combating of corruption and implementation of human rights. We do have a lot of practical actions. And in this point, I want to give the floor to my colleague Alexander, and he's going to explain you a little bit about the actions that we do in the city of Vienna for combating of corruption. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shams. Thank you, Dr. Stelzer, for the invitation to speak at the kickoff event of this global network of cities against corruption. Thank you also for your initial remarks, Mayor Dao. I heard them with a lot of respect, and I'm well aware also that the fight against corruption means different things in different countries, and in countries in many Latin American or Caribbean countries, it means a different personal effort than, say, in a country like Austria. We're well aware of that. Well, I'm speaking here on behalf of Vienna's Vice Mayor, Christoph Wiederkehr, who is, we're not only responsible for the field of education, which keeps us kind of busy now in COVID times, as you can imagine, but also he is the first member of Vienna's government who is expressively responsible for the fields of transparency and anti-corruption. So this is a great new thing, and we're really looking forward to push our efforts to to fight corruption on a city level further. Why is it so interesting, actually, to talk about the efforts of a municipality in the fight against corruption? Well, I think, and this will be, I think, very fruitful in the work of this network. On the city level, policy concepts and theories, they become concrete. They hit the ground, they become tangible. Also, on the municipal level, issues of corruption become more relevant because municipalities very often, especially in the fields of construction, are major customers actually to the private sector. So just to quickly say, as a human rights city and as an anti-corruption city, Vienna a lot of efforts in the fight against corruption. We are a member of Transparency International since 2011. Vienna has been named the most transparent city of Austria by Transparency International already twice in 2017 and 2019. We are about to implement, or we were implementing since 2020, compliance management systems in all departments of the city administration. And a major step that was in February of this year, February 2021, as the first major city in Austria, we implemented a whistleblowing platform to report suspected cases of corruption. So that was a major step, and we already received 160 reports of suspicious activities, and already have a very good results from this initiative. This is also one of our current major areas of work, since the EU guideline for whistleblowing platforms. We're about to implement this in all levels of city administration. But Vienna is very decided not to become complacent. You may ask why Vienna is, or Austria is not known for a very high level of corruption. On the Corruption Perception Index, Austria ranks 15th. You can always be better, but this is a ranking that is okay. But I think there are basically two major reasons why we really want to push further our fight against corruption. First, there is a very practical one. I think we are pretty strong in the internal fight against corruption and in our internal auditing. But in the external accessibility for citizens, for companies who deal with the city, we can be more low threshold, we can be more accessible. But there is a more basic and more moral political one, I would say. On a general level, democratic institutions all around the world, especially in Europe, are under pressure and they lose legitimacy. And the fight against corruption can be a very, very important pillar in that fight to re-establish legitimacy of democratic institutions. So just to conclude my remarks, to quickly highlight two major areas of work for 2022 that we will take on pretty soon. First, our main effort is to implement a new ombudsman against corruption in the city, which will be in the city's architecture, at the same time in the city administration, but also free from directives from the politicians. So that is a very important construct, that you have access to the different parts of the different departments of the administration, but not be guided by the political authorities. The second project, also very interesting, will be to implement a compliance code of conduct for politicians, for members of parliament. This is an effort that has not come to an end in 2017 on the national level, and we are trying to implement that for politicians as well in the next year. So in this very complex endeavors, we are always on the search for international best practices. There is a lot to learn from each other. We have already studied similar institutions that are already into place in different German cities, in Hamburg, in Berlin. With regards to transparency, there are some Eastern European countries, I could name Slovakia, Slovenia, that have very radical transparency laws where we take international best practices. So this is why we are very much looking forward to this global network, because I think we can all profit from a well-established, structured and permanent exchange of idea and international learning in a global network against corruption on the municipal level.
Thank you to Vienna. Shams Asadi, I will assure you that just last week I was in Geneva and introduced our new initiative at the office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, where the initiative was met with great interest. Vienna, you know, it's the city which is consistently voted the most livable city in the world. Also, of course, thanks to long traditional good administration. And I'm very happy that Vienna is not only leading by example, but also doing the things that doing what they are preaching. And this is, I think, exactly what we need in our network, to share good practices. So we have on the one side, we have Cartagena, a beautiful city in the Caribbean, one of the favorite cities of my life for many decades, where one person shows what is possible to clean up a city and to introduce good governance. And we have Vienna, which is a well-established government. You know, you all know the myth, the Red Vienna, the good governance. And now we turn to a province. You know, I've been talking about this initiative wherever I can, of course, to spread the news and to interest cooperation. And once I also talked to the ambassador of Nigeria in Vienna, and then he surprised me very quickly by returning with a note verbal announcing participation of a province in Nigeria, of the province in Borno. And I have to say, I was extremely gratified. I was very moved and I was very happy. And so we reach out now beyond the cities to the provinces, to good governance. So I give the floor now to my good friend, Bolaji Obasanoye, who I'm not reading your CV, but I have to introduce him in a few sentences because we just had this really beautiful experience together. We're both members of the high-level panel for international financial accountability, transparency, and integrity, the so-called FACTI panel of the United Nations, which was looking into how can we limit illicit financial flows to make money available, to help member states raise tax revenue, in the hope that some of it will be channeled towards SDG implementation, towards sustainable development. So that's our history together. And Professor Obasanoye is the chairman of the Independent Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Practices Commission of Nigeria. And I'm very happy that he joins us on this panel today.
Thank you very much, Thomas. It's a pleasure. Let me start by congratulating IACA for this initiative of the Global Anti-Corruption Cities Network. Nigeria is very proud to be on the board of governors of IACA and also to be signing an MOU for further collaboration with IACA later today. We strongly support the idea of the network because our enabling law mandates us to mobilize citizens in the fight against corruption. And this GACCN effort will instill a consciousness of self-check on its members and those who subscribe to the idea and the notion of anti-corruption cities. Maybe if we do not look at corruption in the context of cities, we may not appreciate the importance of this initiative. Corruption undermines the efforts to build cities that can achieve sustainable development goals. Many cities are rapidly urbanizing, and even urbanized cities, they have a tendency sometimes to create governments within governments, where shadow governments and underground governments with a large section of informal sector of the economy compete with. And sometimes they dominate and enjoy more control than the legitimate government, the underworld government. Sometimes informal governments serve as agents for corrupt formal governments, or informal governments undermine the governance efforts of legitimate governments. So the whole idea of an anti-corruption cities network will serve and help to challenge this sort of thing. Secondly, as we know, corruption escalates poverty and increases the inequality gaps in intensely competitive modern city states and urban settings. And often this inequality ends up harming the environment. And we know that climate change is a major buzz for the world today. This is often indicated by what we find as comparisons in infrastructure within city settings, the presence of crime, job opportunities, life expectancy, educational, livelihood, and development opportunities. Within the same, if you like, nation state, you have, or within a city, you have a part where you don't want to grow up in, and you don't want your children to grow up in. And you have another part where you would rather invest to buy your house for your children to grow up in. Now, Anti-Corruption Cities Network will help to remove this inequality, because the essence of governance is for all citizens, not for some citizens or a part or a section. Corruption, obviously, as we know, undermines the ability of the state to provide the infrastructure that is commensurate with the plans of the municipality towards improving livelihoods and meeting sustainable development goals. And it prevents the state from raising the required revenue, while sometimes a large portion of what is raised may not be accounted for. In summary, corruption hinders the attainment of the development-driven municipality. So one of the ways by which this can be challenged, in our view, and which is why we support this initiative very strongly, is that when you have networks, and it's about cities, you have a mayor here whose daily responsibility is to think about governing the city, then he has to eliminate some of these challenges. We know, of course, that sometimes poorly governed municipalities may push up other factors, and it mutates and becomes a dominant obstacle to development. And this is insecurity. Corruption can mutate after undermining the ability of the city-state to be properly governed, to insecurity and terrorism. And notable examples have showed that high-level insecurity will result in governance challenges, internal displacement of citizens, and further compounding the aspiration for development. With insecurity, as I said, comes other problems, including the denial of educational opportunities for children, the destruction of social welfare, and more importantly, the reduction in the daily economic livelihoods of the citizens. For example, if it's an agrarian community, there will be implications for food shortages and possibly famine. And it's in this context when Thomas Stelzer talks about a local municipality that we are quite delighted that IACA has found it fit to recognize one of the provinces in Nigeria, in the northeastern part of Nigeria, Borno State, which had been the epicenter of the insecurity and the challenges of Boko Haram, that has suffered a lot of internal displacement of its citizens. The livelihoods of the citizens have been, it's an agrarian community. The livelihoods have been disrupted. People cannot plant and all that. But in spite of all these challenges, the governor, like the mayor of Cartagena, the governor had remained very focused, had been attacked many times himself and survived many, many assassination attempts to rebuild homes for people to go back home, to improve the security for people to return to their livelihoods, economic livelihoods, planting, food, to resettle children back in schools, and to reduce the number of people in internally displaced camps. In that context, we supported very strongly the recognition of IACA for Professor Babagana Zulum, the governor of Borno State in northeastern Nigeria. Let me quickly try and conclude. We recognize the impact, and from Vienna, we have heard about the 4 pillars that they have talked about. It's as if they looked at my notes as well. Participation is the first key factor, community participation. The ICPC, the anti-corruption agency that I lead in Nigeria, in December 2019, we established a community mobilization initiative called My Constituency, My Project. If the community citizens will not be interested in what the mayor is doing, how he spends the money and all that, then corruption and misgovernance will continue to thrive. So improved transparency and accountability in governance by consultation. We have in many countries, including Nigeria, and possibly in some of the countries that are represented in this meeting, whereby the representatives of the people, either in the legislature or otherwise, nominate projects, what they call development projects, that can help their citizens and that the community needs. But sometimes those projects are not nominated due after consultation. Somebody might just decide, the mayor of Cartagena might just decide that, okay, a region of Cartagena needs this, they need a school. And then you go ahead and build a school. But actually what they need is a health center. They may not want a school. They want a health center. They need a school, all right. But if you ask them, which one do you want first? They say, we want the health center and then you can build the school later. This consultation is often lacking sometimes in initiative for development projects. And it creates challenges for governance because you would have provided an infrastructure that nobody is interested in. Very important that this consultation is done. One of the things that ICPC, my agency, did was to create dedicated toll-free lines to allow communities to call into our office about how much is being allocated to their communities in the budget and for what, okay? So that they can either support or challenge it, follow how the money is spent, and report back to us to aid our own effort at getting community feedback in order to be able to monitor value for money. It also encourages bottom-up consultation in the delivery of projects because those who represent do not sit in the comfort of their offices, sometimes in very urban areas, and decide or determine projects for people who are in rural locations. It also improves synergy between federal and subnational levels. If you take a major city, they have sub-municipalities. And sometimes you have to collaborate in order to deliver the best kind of governance. So in a federal structure like Nigeria, for example, there are federal projects, but sometimes when federal projects are delivered, the federal government itself does not have a locality of its own. Every part of the country is first and foremost a local community and part of a subnational entity. And so this sort of collaboration helps to move things forward. So what are we recommending? Improve transparency and accountability. So I totally agree with the city of Vienna. Robust citizens' engagement in governance. Closing the knowledge gap on corruption in urban settings as driven by city settings and modern municipalities. Because we know that modern cities create their own urban slums, create urban poverty, and they create their own specific problems. To improve the planning and information sharing with citizens, especially on population, on migration, settlement challenges, the cost of living, and law enforcement. All of these things impact governance. And finally, to remove those conditions that drive sometimes rural-urban migration and to remove factors for the ruralization of poverty, ensure more equitable distribution of infrastructure, and of course, development opportunities. We're very happy to be a part of this initiative. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you so much, Chairman Bellagio Obersnoi, for this precious advocacy of people's concerns. You know, we are all here at a conference of states parties, but we all know that UNCAC does not only address governments, it addresses an all-inclusive approach to fight corruption. And I very much believe in it. It's always the cui bono. Who is it for? Is it like the United Nations Charter that does not say we the governments of the world, but we the peoples of the world? And this is so impressive, you know, to get real world pragmatic and valuable instructions how to do it. So let's go back to the city of Cartagena now and ask Major Dao to give us a little bit of an idea how he does his daily fight and also how he survives that.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, the city of Cartagena is the largest tourism destination in Colombia. We have plenty of income. We have the largest industrial sector in the country. We have the fourth largest, busiest port in all Latin America. Despite all this wealth, Cartagena is the second poorest city in Colombia. The disparity between those who have and who do not have is greater and greater every day. And that is the result of corruption. As for best practices, when I took office, we were the only city in the country of Colombia to set up an office called the Office of Transparency and Anti-Corruption, which has taken the lead in promoting different activities to involve civil society. The first one we did was last December. We had an anti-corruption music contest. People who are poor with very little education are not going to read big documents, long documents on the evils of corruption. But everybody listens to music. If you get the message out there through music, not only adults, but even children pick up on it. Just with a catchy beat, they'll dance and they'll sing from where this small, and they grow up already in an anti-corruption environment. So this was a great hit in the city of Cartagena. We had over 60 participants, original anti-corruption music with choreography. It was huge. It was huge, and it stimulated reactions in much of the population where they start losing fear and speaking up. Another thing we're doing is we celebrate in the city of Cartagena. We did last year and again this year, December 9th as the International Anti-Corruption Day, where we bring in special speakers, very high-level speakers, and we broadcast it to all of Cartagena, open invitation to anybody in the citizenry. Last week we held it, and we filled our convention center with over 1,000 people, just locals coming in to hear all the speeches, all the talks, the conversations, the roundtables on anti-corruption. We are currently also holding an anti-corruption investigation contest for original investigations by journalists, by students, by anybody in civil society who wants to investigate and denounce acts of corruption in the city of Cartagena. This contest has the name of a deceased doctor, Jorge Piedrahita, who gave his life fighting the biggest case of corruption in the city of Cartagena many years ago, where approximately $500 million was stolen in the process of privatizing the port of the city of Cartagena. He attacked it with great tenacity, but unfortunately, he was not as powerful as those people who stole the money, and they had him convicted, they sent him to jail, they're persecuted until he finally died, unsuccessfully fighting this. But when I was elected mayor, I retook the banner of my friend Jorge Piedrahita, and I am now opening up this investigation once again. And in his honor, we named this investigative contest, Corruption Investigative Contest. I recommend to people that they denounce corruption on public media, on social media. That is more effective, equally or more effective than denouncing before public authorities. What corrupt politicians most fear is not the judges. In third world countries, judges can all be bought. And when you can't buy the judge, you'll pay somebody to transfer and give the case to another judge who can be bought. What politicians most fear is publicity, the public spotlight. They don't want the citizens, the community to know what they're up to. They don't want to be shamed. They're afraid that if people find out when they walk on the street, people will start insulting them, will shame them. So that is also an excellent tool. Life is worth very little in these third world countries. In a country like Colombia, where so many human rights activists, including anti-corruption activists, are killed permanently on a routine basis. In my previous life, before fleeing for political asylum in New York, I managed to save the lives of several anti-corruption activists who, you see, most anti-corruption activists in my country are people of very little resources. And they're like a butterfly, very fragile butterfly. They don't have somebody strong to support them. Well, we were only 3 lawyers and 1 secretary, but the anti-corruption activists looked on us as the big strong guys because they were a peasant or somebody who was, working for minimum wage. They would come to us and we would help them type up something. We would help them prepare a document. We would give them money to mail documents and what and this kind of stuff. But so then when I did manage to save some lives, others I did not save. I'll give you an example of one man who came to my office. I remember it was on a Friday evening, said, Mayor, well, I wasn't this before I was mayor, it was the activist. He said, this guy, the mayor of my hometown right outside Cartagena, wants to kill me because I'm denouncing all these acts of corruption. And he gave me all these documents. With tears in his eyes, he said, the mayor of that town is going to kill me and nobody pays attention. So I did what I always did back then. I raise a stink and I write a letter to all the newspapers, to the universities, to the Chamber of Commerce, because the publicity is the best way, the public spotlight, also not only to get the word out there, but also to save people's lives. Well, this guy who came there on a Friday, I wasn't able to save him. On Monday, I read the newspaper, he was shot dead, 28 bullets throughout his entire body. So it is a very dangerous activity. When I was in asylum in the city of New York, I started investigating acts of corruption online. I would investigate online contracts, all the documentation related to that contract. And through social media, I would denounce crimes. I would also put it in writing and send it by certified mail to the authorities in Colombia. But I put all this on my Facebook and Instagram, and the people of Cartagena started reacting. They started sending me copious information on different acts of corruption in the city of Cartagena because they believed more and they trusted more in an anti-corruption activist from Cartagena living in the city of New York than the trust they had in local authorities. So they would send me the information and I would file the criminal charges under my name to leave them out of trouble because they knew if they went to the authorities, they would be the ones who get killed. From New York, I was safe. And yes, it does take courage to fight corruption. But you see, when I went on asylum, I lived in the United States long enough to obtain citizenship. So I have dual citizenship. One thing that corrupt politicians know is that the United States government will not let one of their citizens be assassinated in a third world country without getting even. So I have a nemesis. I mean, there are many bad people, a handful of, let's say, the most corrupt people in the city of Cartagena. I said, I can't take them all down at the same time. So I went after the biggest, baddest one of all. The one I know has had at least 15 people murdered because of corruption. And I started going after him. So on one trip coming down from New York to Cartagena, where I had already been informed that he had put out a contract to kill me, I took a picture of my United States passport, my American passport, and I put it on my Instagram and on my Facebook. And I said, Turco, that's my nemesis. Let's see if you dare kill me now. And I came to Colombia and I was intimidated. They would harass, they would look at me funny, but nothing happened. So you have to be brazen, you have to be bold in all of this. We also, when we took office, we started investigating acts of corruption that we inherited. Corrupt contracts, appointments, legal settlements, because we have to. If we didn't investigate and say the state that we found things in, we are the ones that would be later held liable. So we did, we investigated, we denounced many acts of corruption by the previous mayor, by his general secretary, by the head of the legal office, all of this. And we put it out in an 800-page book, which we sent to the authorities. The authorities have yet to initiate the first investigation with what we denounced. But what happened? The people from the previous administration, Cartagena, including the mayor and the people and his secretaries that we denounced, now work for the Colombian control authorities, for the Colombian auditor, for the Colombian controller. And they're the ones who now investigate me and not the investigations against them. So while I denounced their criminal activities, but now they're in the organizations that are responsible for investigating. So they investigate themselves. Do you think there's going to be any consequences? Of course not. But such is life. Okay. Well, thank you.
Unfortunately, our time is limited to 1 hour here.
Yes, sir.
Very obviously, your energy and your leadership is unlimited as a source of inspiration. So we will please visit our homepage, iaka.int, and there you can follow up how our initiative will develop. And we will establish a way that we can communicate with those interested, because this initiative is supposed to be a platform to integrate expertise, goodwill, conviction, to share good practices to those who don't have the courage or who want to learn how to do it, how to fight corruption sustainably in their environment. We still have 5 minutes, so I think we can take at least one question. Is there anybody who has a question? Okay, please.
My name is Florina Dragomir. I'm from Romania, and I would like to know, in your opinion, how important is it to include civil society in the fight against corruption?
Sorry, I could not. How important is?
How important is it to include civil society in the fight against corruption?
Thank you very much. Now, I personally think civil society is essential to fight corruption, because civil society holds those who take decisions accountable. And accountability is one of the most important issues to get things done. So that decision makers hold accountability to do after the elections what they have promised before. So civil society, the citoyen, is essential for a functioning society. This is my belief. And this is why we invite civil society. Of course, we're not an NGO. Even if we might sound one, we're an intergovernmental institution. We deal with governments. And I assure you that this initiative is also supported by the president of Colombia, who I talked about this initiative, and he supports it. So we have global support of many different levels of society for this initiative, which augurs very well for this initiative, I think. We have several cities already expressed interests, among them Sarajevo. Vienna is on board already. There are other cities in line. We have another province in Colombia, Sucre, that is already dedicated to come aboard. So our network is growing. There are several Italian provinces and cities have already expressed interest to join us. So please spread the message, bring those interested, and who can contribute in the network. We're going to be reporting back to you at the next COSP. You can see how we're developing on our homepage. This is really an inclusive effort to share opinion and to spread the fire that we have heard here from our panelists, and the experience that has been contributed from a city that has been quite successful, or is considered to be very successful, to provide information and transparency. The human rights of information and the human right to transparency as a precondition to put a flashlight on what is happening and to fight corruption. I know Article 33 is quite weak of our convention on whistleblowers' access to convention, but we can work on that. We have to keep this in mind, that access to information, transparency. We have still 1 minute. There's another question.
Okay. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for the presentations and thank you for sharing the experiences. I'm IACA graduate, so I'm glad to be here with you today. I would like to ask first, I'm impressed by the experience because when I was at IACA also, we learned about Ronald McLernon, and I have met him, and it was with the local governance course, and it was very impressive. And I had my PhD also in anti-corruption, and it really impressed me, and it helped me and had me some insights, give some insight. My question is for Colombia. I know that there is like a real political will to fight corruption. And there are many really many steps that have been taken to fight corruption, even on the national level. But my question is for Nigeria. I'm impressed also by the experience, because I know that you are really, you had like really a very good, this is a very good initiative. But my question about the hotline, how do you do this? And how do you gather the information for the hotline to see what are the needs of the people? Because I like the idea that you said that we can have a hospital and the school, but the priority is for the hospital.
Thank you very much. We'll be
Thank you.
cut off in 1 minute.
Yeah.
So that does not allow for a comprehensive reply now.
Yeah, sure.
But you refer to several important issues. First, of course, you are a multiplier. You're a bridgehead for us in your society. You have your networks. You know what to do. Go out and do, and join and make others join our network. I think that's so important, advocacy. You have referred to critical cases, which shows that it's not enough to have a perfect resilient normative network against corruption. We have to connect that network with the implementation base, with the practitioners. And this is exactly what we try to do.
I'm sure that
with
Egypt has an
ETIACA
experience and will
and
have to
in
share
this
this.
network, I thank you very much. The hotline. Okay, the mayor just wants to say a very brief thing on hotline. If we are cut off in the mean, okay, I'm so sorry,
Okay.
we are cut off.
Okay, that's
You
fine.
know, but we still have.
Yeah.
Okay, so please, until we cut off, you have the floor.
Okay, very briefly, we started the hotline also where people can report either calling or writing to our anti-corruption, transparency and anti-corruption office. Everything that is received is recorded, it's noted, and they will follow up each and every accusation. We will go, we will check the documentation, we will investigate, we will interrogate city employees. That's why our hotline has been very successful and is very respected by our citizens.
Thank you. I'm very grateful to the organizers that you are granted the extra minute. Yes, please, 1 minute. Yeah.
The hotline operates similar in the same way, but basically with projects is to analyze what has been appropriated and budgeted for. Sometimes citizens don't know anything about that, and then you can give that information. And so it heightens the expectation of what to expect. And if it doesn't come, you can become a whistleblower because it might mean that the money has been diverted.
Great,
Thank you very much.
We
Doris?
have promised our online participants a Q&A as well. May I just read one question from our online participants, which was, how would an e-participation platform add value to the city level initiative? Yes, an online participation platform in the framework of this city level initiative.
Yes, well, e-platforms are common now, enforced upon us by COVID, but there's no return to the status quo ante. So we will take benefit of this also in the future. All the efforts will be mixed in the future, in-person and e-platform. We will create, of course, an e-platform to support our initiative, which will be implemented depending on the circumstances which are above our decision level, of course. But e-platform, thank you very much for the question. Please just check the homepage of ETIACA. We'll have an icon there of our initiative. We will keep you current with what is happening, and we will provide access to our activities and to our growth. So now I thank all the participants here on the panel with me, virtually in Vienna, here in the room, and all to you who have been participating virtually all over the world. My invitation, please join our fight against corruption. It's in our shared interest. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great conference.